place. And it's actually been in development for about the last 5 years, and we continue to develop it today. So it's got quite a background. And the reasons that may be a little bit strange is that it came from problems, which is, we all like to say everything's great all the time. So this is just putting it right up there, that actually the origination of the 3D framework was trying to solve problems. And what was happening was that obviously Rob and I and our colleagues, we were involved in a lot of lean and CI and OPEX types initiatives. And we just saw the same problems coming up time and time again. And often we were sort of called in after an initiative had fizzled or it wasn't really working. And so we thought there's got to be a better way, and to come up with something that can remove these problems. And that's why we developed the 3D framework. So what we're going to do now, and it's the first of the surveys, and the survey is, obviously we've experienced problems, but have you? What's your experience? So the survey is, score the following problem statements in terms of their impact in your environment. So a bit more context. We've got 3 categories of problems. We've got leadership problems, methodology problems, and capability problems. And we got 3 problem statements in each category. So 9 problems in all. So your job is to score each problem statement 0 to 5, where 0 it's a pretty low impact or no impact problem, and 5 is, well, actually it's a really high impact problem. And make it pertinent to your work environment, and don't be too literal. If there's a couple of words wrong in the problem statement, but you've got something very similar, but just a couple of words different, then just, score that as the problem. So if everyone gets that, I'm going to move on to the first category, which is leadership. Now, I'm going to read these out, not because I know everyone can read, but actually sometimes when you hear problems sort of audio, that they can, it's another experience as well as just reading them. So the 3 problems are: problem 1, we have a real problem with sustainability. Our improvement initiatives just come and go. Problem 2, until we change how we measure our people, nothing will really get better. And problem 3, a lot of our waste is caused by leadership behaviors. It's the elephant in the room no one talks about. So those are the 3 problems, and we'll just wait to, that's interesting. So we can all see it in real time. So 10 people voted so far. $15, $17. Up to 22, so getting there. $24, so it seems to be a pattern. So I'll just hand over to Rob here to any sort of observations. How would you look at that?
I mean, it's interesting actually when you look at the top 2, they're kind of got a similar sort of weighting. You can see in the background, the nice thing Menti does is it does a little histogram in the background to kind of show you where people are sort of voting. So the first 2, we've got a problem with sustainability. Our improvement initiatives come and go. People are sort of, kind of middly. It's not a high impact issue. It's not a low impact issue. It's kind of in that sort of middle zone. Also, until we change how we measure our people, nothing will really get better. That's interesting because that one's got a slightly longer tail, and actually it feels that there's slightly more people are starting to say, well, actually, what you measure is how people behave, and so actually that's the impact there. And then the final one, the third one, feels a bit more emphatic across to the right. So a lot of our waste is caused by leadership behaviors. It's the elephant in the room, no one talks about it, and there I can see that the majority of people are saying this, it's about the leaders. I mean, super interesting, particularly just picking up on the last one, for example. We do find that leaders just don't see the waste that they create in the organization. changing strategic priorities, lack of clear direction. It's all often in the vortex of what they've left behind, and it's for their teams to kind of pick up the pieces around decision making. And gosh, as I mentioned earlier, I'm working at the UK government, and you'll be amazed. Even the impacts of what we've seen over the last few days around growth agenda or the budget, little tail things. Everybody's kind of watching that, and it just brings the whole system into a bit of a gridlock for a while we let things go through. So yeah, it's a good one.
Thanks, Rob. I mean, my one build on that is it looks like the last one, a lot of people have voted 4 or 5, to state the obvious. So for some people, it's the leadership behaviours is not a problem. There's a few there at sort of 0 or 1, but then for a lot, it's a very big thing. So yeah, just as you were saying. So the second one, methodology, and again, I'm going to read them out. We sometimes use improvement methods that don't work that well for the problems we face. Number 2, we often chase the latest improvement methodology when what we really need is a pragmatic combination. And number 3, we have 3 initiatives running: lean, automation, and process mining. And guess what? They're all totally separate. Okay, we're up to 18. Really interesting looking at the results. 23. So a couple more, and then we're at 25, Rob, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, great. Gosh, what an interesting set of scores on this one, particularly the first one, that we sometimes use improvement methods that don't work well for the problems we face. I mean, a real blend of different views. Some people thinking that we do, and some absolutely not. I mean, gosh, when I think back to the journey that I've been on personally, I'm sure many of you have as well, back in the day around some of the Six Sigma thinking, all the way up now to, gosh, agility and agile and some of that thinking. I think back about quite a lot of sort of, gosh, regression and some of the pretty dogmatic approaches that we had to follow when we were using DMAIC. So in the right environment, it's great, but when we sort of brought that across into other industries, it wasn't always right. So interesting that there's others that potentially feel the same way. But then the other two have got these sort of double histogram bumps kind of going, they're almost identical, where actually people tend on the whole not to feel that they're chasing the right improvement methodology. It got something that they're kind of comfortable with, but there are a few that feel that you might do, chasing the next thing a lot. And then the last one, around 3 initiatives running. This is one of the ones around being, maybe you're not too literal, because you might not have a lean program or an automation program or process mining initiative. It might be that you've got 3 complementary things that are just completely disjointed. And again, interesting to see that on the whole, it feels as though the majority is slightly not, but there are a few outliers that have got multiple programs running, and they're completely separate. Interesting, we're working with a major financial institution at the moment, and they've got exactly that: 3 complementary but separate programs, different governance. It's actually quite hard to unpick it all and just try and get the right people together in a room to kind of talk about it. So interesting, you guys feel the same way. James, anything else?
Yeah, no, well, just to say those last 2, as you say, it's sort of like not that many people have those problems, but when they do, for the people who do, they're big problems. Yeah, really, really interesting. So third one, capability. And again, I will read them out. Our improvement initiatives stall because we never really embed capability in the business. Second one is, we have no objective way to plan and measure our improvement capability. And the third one is, people just don't see the benefit of learning new capabilities. What's in it for them? Getting a lot slicker at the voting. We're up to 19, and I think we're up to 28 now, we're getting there, Barry. So Rob, over to you, because we're at 24, 25, 26, and some, again, very...
Yeah, I'd say this one's probably the most emphatic, actually, certainly the top two. So our improvement initiatives stall because we never really embed the capability in the business. It feels that people feel pretty strongly about that. Interesting, actually. I guess that can be at a variety of different levels, and I know we're all super busy. Sometimes that can be with the teams. Sometimes that can be with leaders as well. If they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, then these things can stall as well as they move on to their next agenda. No objective way to plan and measure our improvement capability. Again, lots of people feeling that. I mean, gosh, great that we're all part of LCS, because sometimes, qualifications and how people kind of move up through the ranks is one metric that you can use. But yeah, the wider activity is difficult. And then people don't see the benefit of learning new capabilities. What's in it for them? Yeah, this one's a bit more in the middle. I think people probably on the whole feels like they do. I think, again, and we'll talk about it later, but just the qualifications. Sometimes people only have qualifications straight out of school and then nothing else. So people we often find are hungry for learning. So yeah, great, very good.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rob. Well, great results there. And what we're going to do now, and just to sort of say, it's quite reassuring that it wasn't just us seeing those problems as problems. It would have been a bit embarrassing if they'd all been zeros and one. So yeah, we've all seen a lot of those problems. So on to the next few slides is really just me talking, giving a bit of an overview of 3D, how it is, and Rob's going to expand a bit on actually how it works. So I guess the first question is, what are the three dimensions? So the first dimension is team by team. And what team by team does is it just provides a very simple way for teams to self-optimize, driven by the team itself, their way of working and their performance. So it's got a few special characteristics. It's easy to roll out because the team can decide themselves. There's not a whole bunch of other stakeholders they've got to convince. Everything in the team by team dimension is within the remit of the team itself. It's fast because the team can just start making changes immediately. For example, they might decide, guys, let's start having a daily huddle tomorrow. It's all common sense, and it's particularly people orientated. So let me just share a couple of case studies. One was the COO of an European energy company, and her mantra was, we want to move to a place where not everything has to be a project to get improved. Because in this organization, if something wasn't a project and it hadn't sort of gone into that big project management governance to get sort of move forward, things just didn't often, there wasn't that much action. So the reason she selected the 3D framework was quite biased towards team by team, and she saw the team by team dimension as a way to get problems solved on the ground without them having to be projects. The second story, it's sort of similar but slightly different point. We were rolling out team by team to the shared services center of a global bank in India, about 250 colleagues, covering a variety of functions. And truth to tell, they were fed up. They were fed up because they had project overload, so many new initiatives, so many projects. They're way over capacity and completely stressed out. And yet, the reason that they liked team by team was, as we stressed to them, guys, this is not a project. It's just a different way of working. So it's not It's not more work, it's less work. It won't take time, it will release time, and it will start releasing it pretty quickly. So that made all the difference to them, plus the fact that they were an LCS accredited organization, and people could get Simon and colleagues sort of accredited the team by team leader way of working at LCS level 2A, are training for that. And so it made a big difference to the team leaders that they could actually get their LCS level 2A by just starting to work in a team by team way. So that's the team by team dimension. So the second dimension is end to end. And it's as it says on the tin, let's have a standard way to just ensure and improve our processes and systems are in great shape. Because the problem is team by team by itself it's just not enough. And if I maybe just share another story, there was an insurance company that I worked with, and they had rolled out it was successful. It was very customer centric, function based, lean program, which, quite quickly, actually, all the teams were saying, we've completely got our own team in order, we're really motoring within our own remit. But the problem is most of our problems come from upstream, from other teams, and the processes are a bit of a mess, and there's just no way for the teams to get together to fix these end-to-end processes. So until that happens, we're like in second gear in a 5-gear car, we're just not motoring, and ultimately it really hurt that initiative. So that's what the end-to-end initiative is. Now, the end-to-end dimension. Perhaps just one more story on it. I was giving the end-to-end training course to a group of extremely experienced sort of Lean Sigma practitioners. They've been doing it for 10 years. And to be fair, I was pretty nervous because I thought I was going to get shredded. They probably all knew much more than I did. But actually, the course went down very well, because what they said was, we know all the methods, we know all the bricks in the wall, but what we hadn't, what was new for us was, how do we put those bricks together in the right sequence, in the right way, in the right timing, with the right stakeholders to get end-to-end processes really streamlined and working well. So yeah, that's what it is. It's a standard way for colleagues to engage across the organization to get end-to-end processes really working well. And so on to the third dimension, which is again and again. And, so end-to-end supports team by team and vice versa. But actually, if it all fizzles out after a year or two, then that's the biggest waste of all. And so the again and again dimension is all about sustainability. It's, what do we need to do? What needs to happen for the initiative to get totally embedded into the culture? So it just becomes, this is the way we do things around here. That's the purpose of again and again. And I sometimes get asked, does this dimension ensure sustainability, does it sort of guarantee it? And of course the answer is no, nothing can guarantee it. But what it does do is to make it much more resilient to the turbulence and the bumps and the knocks that we all know so many of these initiatives get just as a matter of course. And the analogy that I use is, it's like a well-built sailing boat. It's designed for storms and squalls so that it doesn't sink when those sort of things hit it. So I think that's quite a good way to look at what the again and again dimension is looking to do. And I love this slide really, and I love that shape, the triangle. So that's the 3 dimensions and how they work together. But the whole is, or the sum of the parts is worth more than the whole, or whatever the saying is. So 1 + 1 + 1 is 4, because they all support and reinforce each other, a bit like a triangle does, which is, triangle is the basis of so many buildings and architecture and basis of the diamond structures. So, and the reason is, whichever way you push it, it doesn't collapse. It's the only shape that doesn't collapse when you push it. So a good question is, well, how do the dimensions support each other? And this brings us to the next Mentimeter quiz, which I think is going to get the brain cells fizzing a bit. So that's our experience, that obviously they reinforce each other. And what we've done is we're going to list out, and again, I'm going to read them out, that the 6 ways in which the 3 dimensions support each other. And the question is, based on your experience, rank them in terms of their relative importance in your organization, or importance or relative helpfulness. So each dimension has 2 ways, obviously one way in which it supports each of the other dimensions. So that's 6 in all. It's not an all-inclusive list, but rank them in their relative order of importance. 1 is for highest impact, potential impact in your organization. 6th is for lowest. So I'm going to read them out. So in no particular order, team by team supporting end-to-end, teams are already in place to continually improve the processes following the initial improvement. They don't just sort of sit there and rust. Number 2, team by team supporting again and again. Teams embed improvement culture into daily working. It's not posters and beanbags, it's actually in daily working. End-to-end supporting again and again, or sustainability. Excellent processes support sustainability. So end-to-end supporting team by team. End-to-end process improvements empower teams outside their direct area of influence. So again and again, supporting end-to-end. Leaders engage in improvements, and obviously it's improvements across many different functions in most end-to-ends as a community. And someone's voting, so I've lost the last one, so you have to read that. So okay, take your time. I think there's a bit of thinking in this, and you can fiddle in the ranking as much as you want before you submit. So you don't have to sort of rank it perfectly to start with. Wow, fascinating watching it move. 16 people so far. $20, so I think we'll wait for at least sort of 26, 27. It's definitely. Well, at 27, so wow, definite pattern and some messages there. So Rob, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit like watching a horse race there for a minute. It was leaders are in front, then it's the teams in front, capability building came to the beginning of the front, then it went back down again, which is really interesting because I guess it sort of represents just where different, oh gosh, leaders takes it. Just where different people are in different parts of their organization, because again, that triangle that we talked about, it is a strong structure, but it's kind of different weighting depending on different organizations. So lead number 1, well, joint first, I think, to be honest, leaders engaging in improvements as a community. And then teams embedding improvement culture in daily ways of working. I mean, it's really interesting that the end-to-end aspect and the team by team aspect have both sort of like come to the top. Teams embedding improvement in daily ways of working is absolutely, you know, if you can get into that sort of kata, that kind of just standard way of just working, it just takes a lot of stress out, and also just helps people bond. But then we've also got the leaders engaging as a community. So in this kind of leaders getting involved, properly getting in the work, properly understanding what's going on, bringing people together, helping kind of remove blockers. So that's good. At the other end, though, gosh, at the other end, process improvement, empower teams outside of their direct area. So end to end, impacting on the team by team aspect. And so here, just not as many people feeling that actually what you do in a process in one part doesn't necessarily have as isn't as supportive, I guess, as to the whole pie as the others for other teams. Gosh, if we had chat, I'd be interested to kind of explore that one a little bit. But yeah, no, I understand. I think given the immediate focus sometimes of just improving people's day jobs, it's often what's in front of you. And yeah, they might have an end-to-end improvement, but in this case, it's just focus on what's in front, and ultimately the people. Again, that's what I'm kind of feeling here. It's about leaders and teams. Yeah.
Bob, can I just make a couple of other observations? I think it's really interesting that the top three both include, again and again, is the only dimension that's included in the top three in how it supports the others. And those top three are all the most culture-based. So whether it's leaders, engaging as a community, or teams embedding improvement culture, or capability building as part of the culture. So I think it's really interesting that the culture-based ones have sort of risen a little bit to the top, and the more slightly mechanical-based ones are close to the bottom. So, no, really interesting. So let's move on. And now at this point, you might be thinking, well, we get it about the dimensions and how what they are, but how do they actually work? How do you roll out team by team? What's involved? And to answer that question, I am now going to hand over to Rob.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting when you think about, as you say, how do you roll out team by team? What's involved? What's the answer? Are you asking all the right questions? And the important thing from a 3D workplace perspective, and really the secret sauce that we've put into the whole thing, is that across end to end, team by team, and again, each dimension has a 5-question checklist, and these questions are really, I guess, the culmination of the 20 years that we've been working together. We've done hundreds of different programs over the years, or been involved in different things, and we've just seen, linked to the problems, these powerful questions, if you ask them in the right way, at the right time, in the right order, really can deliver some pretty profound change that starts to happen. Just as an example, so question 1 in the end-to-end dimension is around who are your customers and what do they want? So, I mean, that's going to be a common question that's probably close to a lot of our hearts, but it is profoundly interesting how different customers, clients kind of think differently about it. So we're doing a piece of work a while back at a energy provider, and we were working in their debt collection team. And the big question there, asked of all the agents, was, how much debt have you collected? And there were people going around ringing bells and honking horns about how much debt had been collected. No one was actually asking the customers, do you really want to be in debt in the first place? Why are customers in debt in the first place? No one was asking that question. People were just asking, how good are we at collecting debt, which was kind of counter. And we were rewarding that. The whole piece of work was rewarded around reducing debt, but actually moving upstream and saying, well, how do we stop? Because no one wants to be in the first place. So long story short, just, who are our customers and what do they want? Just a super simple, profound question that starts. And so each of these checklists across the 3 dimensions have these simple 5 questions. So if we just move on. So the interesting thing about the power of questions is that the answers flex depending on the different sort of work environment that you're in. So if you're in one particular work environment, and obviously I talked about mines, for example, the questions that we've got in the 3D workplace are standard, but they flex depending on the environment and what's available. So if we just talk through them. So we're going to go to another Mentimeter quiz. Thanks, Samantha, just in the chat. Not to worry, thanks for joining. On the Mentimeter quiz. So end-to-end checklist question 2. What is happening at this moment? And so what we're going to do is provide you with a series of different environments. So there's going to be a small hotel that you are the owner and that you run. Then there's going to be an environment where it's a global bank renowned for its advanced use of technology, and you guys are the COO. And then the third environment is going to be a steelworks, and you're the manager. And so what we're going to do is provide a number of different methods that you could use to go out and find out what is happening in the moment. And you get to choose, I think you get to choose 3. That's the maximum. You only get to choose 3. And we'll just see how things change depending on the different environments. So question 1, you're a small hotel owner. Please select up to 3 methods that you would use to answer the question, what is happening at the moment?
Rob, is it worth just reading out that just this one time?
Yeah, okay, sure, yeah.
They are quite small, just in case anyone can't.
So go and see a bit of Gemba. The next one would be value stream mapping. So getting the process up on a wall and using the value stream map templates. A third one would be around process mining and using process mining software such as Lascelles or Disco. Others are available. A SIPOC. Just asking people, going and asking work colleagues, or asking your customers, getting out and doing some voice of customer, or might be other things. Gosh, 22 votes in. Pretty.
Yeah, so we're up to 25. So I mean, just to make if I'll do the observations this time, Rob, I mean, one observation is it's very clear, isn't it? It's really clear. These are the 3 things I do. I run a small hotel. I go and see. I'd ask my work colleagues and I'd ask my customers, and it's pretty binary. And 1 or 2 people are going to do a SIPOC, which is great. So no, very, very clear results. So shall I move on to the
so next
to the second
environment? So this is where you're in a high-tech bank, and again, same methods, same order. Select 3 methods that you might use if you're in a high-tech bank to answer the question, what's happening at the moment?
So up to 24, so that's pretty good. Voting's getting pretty slick, and so much more as you'd expect in a big global bank. A much bigger variation. Definitely talking to customers, so that's great to see. Go and see much smaller than before, because I remember once I was doing a job in a bank and somebody said to me, what's the point of going and seeing? We're just going to see a lot of people in front of computers at their desk typing into terminals, so it's actually very difficult to see what's happening. Definitely value stream mapping, much bigger in this case, and as is process mining software and doing a SIPOC. So yeah, again, what I think what's coming through is it's exactly the same question, but the answers are flexing to the environment. So that's good to see that happening. And Rob, over to you.
So final environment. So now we're at steelworks. And again, same question, 3 methods that you use to answer what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, so up to 21, pretty good, pretty good. So joint 24. So observations, again, is sort of really interesting. And as you'd expect, on-site manager, you got to go and see. I remember once doing a job, improvement job at a central electricity generating, or a CCGT, but one of these huge electricity generating combined gas turbine plants the size of 5 football fields. The manager spent 0 hours in his office all the time. He was just walking around seeing what was happening on the ground. So, and together with Ask Your Work colleagues, which you would expect to be a bit bigger than asking your customers in that case. But, and then using, some people using the process mining software actually might be great for sort of what's happening in the machines and the heat and the smelting and something like that. So yeah, again, just pointing that same question, but it's pulling different answers. So Rob, any other observations? Or
no, it's good. It's interesting to see that a few more of the sort of in a steelworks, you might use a bit more of the sort of broader tools around value stream mapping and do a side process mining and steelworks mining. I don't know, but yeah, it's good. No, it's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So just talk a bit about LCS. I mean, we're all here because of LCS, and I assume through that reason, just like James and I, it's probably had a reasonably pretty profound impact on your lives. Certainly has for James and I. It's it's something that I guess we've been involved in for nearly eight years or so, nearly a decade, I guess. And it's over that time we've seen the benefit on thousands of different people. And if I think back to what I said earlier, often something that we weren't expecting from a benefit perspective was that often people leave school, they go into work, and then they don't think about any form of qualification again. But to use LCS to be able to get a qualification around how to improve their daily lives and their way of working has just been something that's just been time and again. We've just seen a lot of people holding up their certificates and feeling very proud of what they've achieved. Also, at the same time, we've had CEOs kind of standing up and holding their certificates as well, and providing that sort of fantastic sort of drive and sort of leadership sort of moment for everybody to kind of act as a common language. So yeah, obviously it's that globally recognised external standard. And James, can you just pull up all the bullets?
I'll pull them all up.
Yeah, and yeah, it does provide that structure, and sort of really sort of helps people sort of properly focus around the improvements. But Simon, I mean, gosh, thanks for letting us today kind of present to the LCS network. Just kind of any thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, I think I mean, obviously from our point, it's great to see the LCS having an impact that was originally designed to have back in the early 2000s. The focus then was more on skills and capability. I think that's moved more towards that fourth bullet. What's in for me, the reward recognition lead to engagement. That's becoming the key factor that I think has emerged over the last decade or so. And its ability to provide scalability as well, you know, and if you need to get that cohort of improvements, I think I'm a believer in improvement being, you know, improving 99 being 1% rather than 1 being 99%. So it's there's sort of things that emerged, but it's rooted in motivation theory, in reward recognition as a means to boost engagement, which has impact on retention, productivity, all those sort of things. So I think used correctly, I think it's a powerful force that complement whatever model that you're using.
Great. Thanks.
Carry on here.
So okay, well, but why write a book? Well, what we noticed, I mean, we noticed a couple of things. The first was that wherever we were doing lean or 3D workplace type initiatives, it definitely had this positive impact on people and enjoying work more. And it just seemed such a good thing for people to know about. So that was the first thing. But the second thing that both Rob and I noticed, and I particularly noticed this at social events, was that, you know, people say, what do you do? Fairly standard question. And you go, well, I do lean and I make things work better and go faster. And first of all, their eyes would sort of glaze over. And when you'd sort of shaken them awake, they once they sort of got it, no one would really know. Very few people would know what you were talking about, or they'd sort of go, oh, I remember that Six Sigma stuff from 10 years ago. But very few people would really know what you were talking about. And then when they did get it, and you've given a few examples and made it come alive a bit, they go, oh my gosh, we could so do with some of that in our work environment. It's such a mess. It's so political. The blame game is in full flight, etc., etc. So we thought, well, hold on, if there's this big majority of people who aren't that aware of something that could be so helpful, let's write a book that explains it all in a really simple, really friendly. It's not a book trying to be cleverer than any other book. It's a book actually trying to be much simpler and accessible way. And so that's what we've done. And the 3D workplace is the result. And people often ask, you know, yes, but who's it for? And what we say is it's actually for anyone, you know, almost everyone works in one environment or another. It's for anyone who is less than satisfied with their current work environment and wants a simple, hands-on way to do something about it. And so, of course, this is not just large corporations. It's small businesses, it's professions, legal firms of lawyers or accountants, schools, hotels, restaurants, charities. So it's just trying to bring this to a very wide type of work environment. And I have to say, the book's only been out a short time, but we've had some really interesting feedback that it's as much about wellness in the workplace, in a very practical sense, you know, taking unnecessary stress out, people solving problems together. So it's as much about wellness and people feeling good as it is about, you know, operating efficiencies and better outcomes. And one head teacher who just read the book, she said to me the other day, you know, it's not about making work better. It's about making work easier, because work is so hard anyway, you know, so getting things done is so hard. So if you can just make that easier to get things done, then that's a good thing. And so that's the type of book it is. It's very approachable, friendly to read. There's no jargon, lots of real life stories and examples. In fact, I was a bit nerdy and I counted up today. I thought they were going to be about 50. There are actually 117 stories and examples. There's these, you know, little hand-drawn, very simple illustrations. There's about 19 of them, and that's obviously people at a value stream mapping, but it makes it very accessible. You've got one chap saying, I had no idea we had so many approvals. Another person going, oh, we've taken 30 days to do 8 hours work. Or another person going, why is legal involved here? And we've all seen that, and hopefully that sort of illustration brings it alive a bit. And there's 19 of those, and it's very easy to use because you just start asking questions. And actually what we found is that as soon as people start asking the questions, things start to change. You don't necessarily have to have all the answers. So 2 themes. One is that it can all be run with a whiteboard and Sharpie pens and Post-it notes. But a parallel theme is that it all works in a remote working environment, whether it's with huddles or virtual huddles or giving upskilling through remote training courses. And if anybody's interested in the remote working element, then if you go to the 3dworkplace.com, there's actually an article specifically on the 3D workplace in, you know, for remote working. which you can download. So that's the book, and what we'd like to sort of finish the more formal part of the presentation is just to we'd really welcome your feedback, and we've got 3 questions to ask for your feedback. So into 3 more Mentimeter questions, and question 1 is this: if you decided to deploy elements of 3D in your organization, how would you start? And there's 4 options, and you can only choose one. So I'll go to the next slide. The options are mostly team by team, mostly end to end, mostly again and again, and in some combination. So up to 9, God, fascinating. 17, 19. It's like a horse race. Team by team is doing quite well. So Rob, over to you for any observations. We've got about 25, 26 people.
Yeah, I mean, it's really clear, isn't it, that people are saying primarily it's in some combination. That's the greatest one, and you know, we've done it in all different ways. But I think I tend to agree with the group that often you might start with team by team as the initial bit, but you need to bring in some of the capability building aspects of again and again, some of the leadership coaching aspects of again and again, some of the toolkits and methods to be able to kind of help make this really sustainable. So in some combination is probably the most common way of doing it. I would then say that actually the second most common way is around just team by team, just getting teams working really well, helping them understand what their purpose is, who their customers are, how they had a good day or a bad day, a good week, bad week, you know, helping them solve their problems and be able to find ways to just get themselves out of that sort of, or make things easier, as James just said. So I get that. End to end, yeah, lots of that, probably more on the team side now. Actually, end to end is actually a lot of process digitization aspects now, and it kind of gets rolled into larger programs. And then again and again, we've done a few with again and again starting, and they've tended to be the ones where people have wanted to change a culture. We need to change a cultural way of working. We've got an endemic problem in our organization, and we need to properly think about, or we've tried this quite a few times in the past, and we just don't know how to get it to stick. So can we just start with the again and again thinking first time, and take all that learning from before and just properly help it stick in and embed in our organization. So yeah, really good, really interesting.
Great, thanks Rob. Yeah, as you say, really interesting. So feedback question 2 of 3. We have several new 3D products coming down the line. Please help us prioritize. So listening to voice of customer, eating our own medicine. Which of these new 3D products and services would you potentially find most helpful? So there's 5 coming up, and you can select up to 3 that you'd potentially find most helpful. Just a little warning, if you select one and then you submit, you can't go back. So you need to do your selection, and then so you can select up to 3 and then submit when you've done your selection. So the new products are audiobook, different language versions, short 45-minute versions, so sort of 30 pages or so, series of e-courses, video tutorials, and we're talking 5-minute video tutorials, watch on your mobile. Wow, so 12, that's fascinating. 17, that's really interesting. Video tutorials, wow. 21, 22. So about 3 or 4 more people to vote. So Rob, yeah, clear pattern over
really clear pattern, and interesting. Gosh, interesting, because we asked different groups these questions, and I think it really reflects the individual's personal way that they engage in learning. knowledge. Some people listen to audiobooks, you know, when they go out for a walk or when they're sort of doing things around the house. We've had a few bits like that, but video tutorials. I mean, we live in a world of YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and those short little videos that can kind of help people really understand that they can reach for. You know, I really get it. And then sort of equal pegging on the shorter version and the series of e-courses, which is great. It's really helpful, and maybe the different language versions coming in down the back. But part of me suggests that maybe that's just you know, we're where we are in this conversation. So yeah, really helpful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. And the third question: what would a webinar be without a word cloud? Please type up the 3 words that come to your mind about the value of the 3D workplace book and concept. So very much about what comes to your mind in terms of value. You can choose up to 3 words. Words can be 2-word phrases. That counts as 1 word. Just type whatever comes into your mind. And again, if you've got 3 words, then you need to type 3 words before you submit, or it'll just go, if you press submit, it will just go with whatever word you've put in. Looking forward to the first one. So we've had 8, 9. 14, simple and accessible, empowering. That's nice. 15, just definitely going to wait for all sort of 24, 25, because that's where you get the emphasis. 21, 22. So probably a few more to come in. Rob, any?
I mean, gosh, quite heartening to see the different words, actually, because when, gosh, James, you know, it's 3 years of sort of creating the book, and well over nearly 2 decades of kind of thinking through the structure. And when we wrote it, we did want something that was accessible and simple and practical and easy to use and inspiring, and something that just anybody can just use, whether you're running a corner shop or some sort of small business, all the way up to if you've got a big you know, you're in a big financial institution or a big company and you're kind of using it. Something that as James mentioned earlier, just people just feel frustrated. You know, I just need to get this working. They can just pick up the book and be able to use some of the principles and dip into it. So yeah, lovely to kind of see that.
That's great. So just moving to, so Simon, I don't know, hand over to you and Rob just to sort of, Simon, do you want to pick up on this?
Yeah.
And start to
Yeah, we're obviously with the free competition, draw. So we're going to give away some copies of the 3D Workplace book. All you're going to do is put your name and email address in the chat, and then we can literally put that into a hat at some point next week and draw them out, and you will receive a copy. We didn't discuss whether you're going to sign it, guys, but that'd be a good idea. So if I can twist their arms, and I'll.
Yeah. They'll be personally signed, and yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be even more value, a signed copy. So so please do that. And we'll as a way of thanking you for participating. And again, James and Rob would like any other feedback you want to leave informally or via other channels.
Great. Thanks, Simon. Then
Yeah,
Rob,
and I was going to say just that we've got
Yeah.
this being recorded, so we can share that. We'll put a page on the website with a copy of the slides and the poll outputs that come out of this, and obviously a link to the video. And James, Rob, going to mention about your website as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the 3dworkplace.com that's now up and running. Links to the book. What we also, if you bought the book, there's also a link to some downloads in there. So the content is in the book to be able to get the downloads. So yeah, that's up and running. We're going to be using just not spamming, but we're going to do some regular newsletters and updates. As you saw from the previous conversation, we've got new products kind of coming down the line, and we really want this to be just hugely useful for people. Recognizing, as I said earlier, that people consume information in different ways. So the videos, and we've got new videos coming out, we'll let people know. The e-learning courses are in development, so that's heartening that you guys see that they'll be helpful. And also, if you just want to get in touch, this is actually one of the first webinars that we've done. So also, if you want to get in touch and just give us some feedback, we'd love that. Yeah, just you'll see us if you're in the LCS world, and obviously the lean world. You're going to see us probably at future networking events and other events. So do come up in person or virtually and say hello.
That's great. So I mean, I think we do have timing's been quite good. I mean, obviously, if anyone, we've got about 15 minutes, haven't we, Simon? If
Yeah, we've got time for a few questions.
Put a question in. What would be the easiest way, in chat or just coming off mute?
Well, I think if you stop presenting, so we get the tiled screen up, and then if anyone wants to ask a question, they obviously need to. They can put their hand up or just unmute and start talking. Whoever comes out first, obviously, has the floor. So, any questions to James or Rob about what they've just delivered, or any other linked thoughts about the book? Or is it too near lunchtime?
I mean, there's no problem at all if there's no questions. Just.
Yeah, thanks.
So, hi.
Hi,
Can I ask a question? Hi, James.
Please do. Marina, is it? Yeah.
Yes. So I'm just thank you for that interesting webinar. Also nicely done in the interactive way. So very interesting also to see the views from the other participants in the polls. So they're really interesting. And yeah, my question would be, I'm quite new to the lean world, let's say. I tried to implement some stuff in our company. So I found myself in some polls again. And my question would be, with that book, would you suggest that someone like do it from bottom up, so without really the support of the let's say company leadership, because they might be stuck in some old ways, and so you try to do that from bottom up? Is that doable, or do you have some advice for that?
Wow, that's a really good question. Rob, do you want to?
Yeah, I would say just start, if I'm honest. I mean, if you can help your team, that's the easiest way to just get going. And then the next step is then if they start to see benefits. So you might start with a team by team component, as we mentioned before, using the book as a bit of a book club, which we've seen with others. Just you can kind of share some of the topics with the team. Just use it as an engagement tool to kind of go, look, what did you think? Oh, should we try some of this stuff? And then that gives you a bit of a platform to then say, you bring a manager or someone along and say, look, we're doing this. We've seen some some benefit? What do you think? And then start to ask some of those questions, and then it can go from there. The alternative, that's one end of the scale. It's very doable. The alternative is you can do something more material, because I'm sure you're probably not alone. There's probably other people in the organisation that might feel the same way around particular frustrations. And look, just really, really happy if it's helpful to just have a separate chat offline and just kind of have a wider chat about what we've done elsewhere, or just how we've kind of helped companies sort of drive some pretty profound change. So there's happy to do both.
I think it's worth adding. Sorry, James. The research shows that, and this is from the early 2000s, the biggest factor in lean failure is lack of leadership support and engagement. So whilst you've got to start, you've got to keep an eye on how do you convince that leader, so you've got to be making the case constantly, because ultimately if they don't buy into it, or the team, then it's going to be a factor that's going to bring it down. So be wary if you haven't got that. You've got to work on that as well.
Yeah, I was just going to give a little example, actually, Marina. So I did some work with a small company, 14 people. It was a sort of agriculture trading company. They had, rather than everyone having to take their cows to market, really interesting company, partly very logistical and physical movements, but partly trading and saying, I've got these cattle and blah, blah, blah. But it's 14 people, and with leadership quite cynical about this sort of stuff. And what they did what Rob just said, and sort of started at the bottom, got some huddles going, got a few teams buying into it. And then the plan was, which to be honest got interrupted by COVID, but the plan was to then, when they had an all company meeting, which is quite a simple thing to do when you're 14 people, to have a present out by people who've been doing stuff for the last 3 months with all the leadership there. And that they all felt that was going to be much more effective than trying to convince all the leadership before actually even doing anything. So
yeah. And so one final build, because there's other hands up. Marina, I've just seen who you work for, so we can definitely talk. We can just put that together, 2 and 2 together, and we can take that off.
Well, yeah, I voted for the ecosys before.
Yeah, I bet you voted for the ecosys. Yeah, I've seen that. So brilliant. Yeah, we reach out separately and we'll have a chat. Yeah, okay.
The raised hands is good. Shall we just go left to right? Is Faye? Have I said your name right, Faye?
It's Fee.
Oh,
that's fine.
Thank
you for asking. So where I work, we're about 4 or 5 years into our journey now, and I've met Rob before. We had an initial cultural explosion of continuous improvement and a real buy-in from at all levels. But one of the things that we found, and COVID was a big factor, is that leadership level of talking the talk but not necessarily walking the walk is one of the biggest problems and challenges we're facing in terms of the again and again embedding the culture. And my question is, where you've seen that in your years of experience, what would you say are your sort of top tips in terms of overcoming that hurdle and that iceberg at the bottom, where you can't, how do you crack into that leadership mindset to help them to understand that it's not just enough to talk about it, but they actually need to live and breathe it?
yeah, really good question. Rob, do you want to?
I'm happy to take that one. Yeah, I mean, gosh, Fee, and good to see you. So I guess there's kind of 2 or 3 aspects, and I know obviously quite a bit about your company situation, so I won't go into too much detail. But what we've done elsewhere is actually properly spend quite a profound amount of time with the leaders, properly coaching them, acting as genuine, almost exec coaches, to kind of first of all help them from that personal angle, overcome some of the challenges that they're happening. The next step is then actually working with them as a collective leadership team. and properly getting into their leadership meetings, observing the meetings, properly then understanding, why are you thinking that? Why are you doing that? Let's kind of get underneath the hood of some of these things. And then the third thing is actually working with them much more closely on a day-to-day to actually, it's not just a whilo or a dialo, it's actually with them, helping to get them closer into the work to properly understand what's happening. Obviously, your company's going through quite a bit of change at the moment, so I can understand why. Obviously, there's a lot of other stuff happening, but ultimately, it comes back to that they're all people, and they're all really busy, and they're trying to do the right thing, but sometimes just noise gets in the way. So working really, really closely with them is what we've done elsewhere, which is slightly different to what we were helping you guys with a few years ago. So thanks.
Great. Thanks, Fee. So we've got good timing, actually. We've got time for 2 more questions. So it goes Steve and then Scott. And that probably then brings us to a good wrap-up time. So Steve, great to see you again. Over to you.
Yeah, and thanks again. Just to reiterate, a really great session from all 3 of you. Thank you. Just a quick question, because you mentioned about doing this virtually as how most of us work now with teams that are often working from home. Any top tips or things to avoid when trying to deploy any of these tools remotely, particularly around having worked and done some of this stuff face to face, where you can get the post-its notes up and get an atmosphere and that sort of thing, trying to then translate that into working through screens and snatching hour here and then we'll come back for another hour. Is there anything that you would recommend to do or not do in any of these spaces?
Rob, sorry to pass it again to you, but you've done so much of this.
I mean, it's difficult. It is difficult. Particularly when you're working in a virtual environment. The challenge that we've had is just the simple things like getting people to turn on their cameras, and just being able to kind of engage in the day-to-day. What we've done sounds a bit counter, obvious though, is we've got people together and we've said, we know you're in a remote environment, we're gonna spend a bit of money, we're gonna go back to the old way, and we're gonna come together for a couple of days in a room. And we're going to start to do some of the workshops. We're going to do a bit of training. We're going to just start to create that sort of common core, which has then recreated some links that might have fallen away in that sort of virtual time through COVID, and just started to get things going again. And then we've made it just a regular thing. I mean, sounds simple, but it's kind of just help build it. Yeah, you asked about some of the sorry, any builds on that? Yeah.
Well, at the what I've noticed, speaking to a lot of organisations who've gone down the virtual stuff, bite-sized chunks is the phrase that has come out. If you have to do it remotely, then you can't do 3-hour sessions. It's going to be split up into the manageable bite-sized chunks, which could be half an hour, could be an hour, and that is what people are finding is working. It's got disadvantages because you don't get the flow, but the reality is that's what people are doing. So maybe that's a practical thing to think about. Obviously, the content's got to fit within that, but that's what a lot of people are doing now.
Great, thank you, Simon. Scott.
Hi, thanks very much for a great session. I found it very, very useful. I just had a question, and I suppose it's going back to that leadership, and I suppose I'm going back to the very start, so maybe even before the 3Ds come into play. How do you suggest, that you'd probably work with a leadership team to understand the need for change, but when you're trying to roll that out across the organization right down to the lowest level, have you any recommendations or techniques for really getting everyone across all levels of the organization to understand that need for change and to understand why they need the change? Because sometimes what I've found so far is that we're at a leadership level, we're very much on board and want to implement change, but then as you go down through the levels where there is maybe a bad culture or a very negative culture, it's quite hard to start implementing that change.
Yeah.
So, Rob, shall I
you go for that one, James.
just share an example that I had. So this organization was about 400 people based in the Netherlands, actually. And again, very silo orientated, a little bit like you're suggesting. There was this big sort of maybe middle management block. And we found that running a series of the leadership courses, starting with the board and very hands-on, and they're sort of 2 days or 1 day, but doing it as a community was very important, and maybe making a few videos and getting them to do hands-on practical exercises and putting that out. They had their own sort of television communications. They were quite sophisticated in terms of sort of company communications and getting that out there. And then actually that same course was then, once it had the board sponsorship, it was then run for about 30 or 40 different leadership teams. And we did the same thing actually with a big bank. And so we just cascaded down through the leadership teams. And there's having run that course like a number of times, there's a couple of things I'd say about it, which is, one, very few it gives the leadership team the opportunity as a community to buy in. And that's what I think is so important. It's no use getting sort of an individual stakeholder here or there. It's got to be as a community. It's often the first time they've ever talked about it as a community. Lots of them have had pretty negative experiences with Six Sigma and other things in the past. So they've got sort of quite a good reason to maybe be a bit cynical. But anyway, I'm watching the clock. I've seen that work quite well when it's done quite fast and through the whole organization. Scott, I don't know whether it's
I think that's maybe what I was expecting you to say, because it's something I'm experiencing at the minute, and I've sort of found, it really does need to, stem from the top, but the same sort of standards need to cascade down through the organization, or else it'll quickly struggle.
Yeah. There's a really good model. Ooh, I can't remember. It's literally just in my head. It's a 4-box model that says if you've got leaders engaged, or if you've got the front line engaged, and if you're only doing work that only leaders are engaged, they feel that they've got to try and make out people understand. Whereas if you've got only the front line engaged, then and not leaders, then the front line are thinking, well, I just want my boss to sort of properly understand this. They don't get it.
Yeah.
And so you have to do this pincer movement in 2 angles. So we normally start with a leadership program at the start, kind of kicks it off, gets them in the right mindset, thinks about planning. And then the second angle you then fire off is actually team by team, and properly investing in team leaders, team ways of working, getting them excited about it, because then leaders have got the language that the frontline are also using, and it brings it all together to create this kind of common, and they all understand their roles they've got to play in the change. So again, we talk about it in the book, but yeah, that's a core tenet of 3D.
Okay, well, I think we run out of time
actually,
now. Otherwise, I'll have to mute you. Okay, so great. It's just past 12. We've run out of time, so I'd like to thank Rob and James for facilitating so well through this session. Thank you all for turning up. Look out for your emails over the next week. We'll send links to the outputs and the video, and any questions, obviously you can get back to us. So thanks a lot, and especially for participating and producing great poll results, and have a good rest of the day. So goodbye.